Hello and welcome on in to the Minor League Baseball Analyst release party, the 16th edition of this thing. My name is Ryan Bloomfield. I'll be your host this evening, but got about an hour-ish planned to talk through our 16th edition with two of my good friends here, Brent Hershey, who is the editor of the Minor League Baseball Analyst. Brent, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a crazy week for us in the prospect baseball world at Baseball HQ. But glad here to share the book for one thing with everyone tonight. So looking forward to it.
Sure, I could hear your sigh of relief across the entire country when you got this thing out.
Yes.
Despite that last minute Mets Indians trade right before Mets Cleveland trade, I should say.
Yeah.
Right before press time.
And we got it in. We got it in. Chris came through for us, and we switched things around. Hopefully, so yeah, that's part of it too.
And speaking of Chris, the quote unquote, and I tagged this from Brent, who put an article, prospect extraordinaire. Chris Blessing. How's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm just it's nice and cold here in Georgia, and I don't like when it's nice and cold here in Georgia. So I'm glad I'm indoors and not at a ballpark watching some inter-squad college games.
Those are the diehards. Those are the diehards. So, so thank you, everybody. It'll be Brent and Chris really kind of running the show tonight. I'll try and keep them in line as best as I can. Like I said, we've got roughly an hour planned for you all tonight. A few housekeeping things. If you could, please just hit the like and subscribe button to our video. We're trying to do a lot more live streaming content here at HQ, especially during draft season. So any exposure that you can give to the YouTube channel would be greatly appreciated. And then throughout the evening, we want to make this interactive. So please leave comments. Leave questions. Well, we do have a whole Q&A section at the end of tonight to get to that. But if you have questions as Chris or Brent are talking on a certain part of the book, we'll handle those. And I believe that's about it. So if someone could just leave a comment, make sure it's rocking and rolling here, that would be much appreciated as well. So this evening, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of the 16th edition, which went out Monday midday, online only this year, for reasons which we will likely touch on throughout. But we want to talk about the prospect evaluation in a lost year. And this came up in the baseball forecaster release party, how we were not complaining, but saying how hard it was to evaluate major leaguers with a 60-game season. You guys had 0 games to evaluate a lot of these guys. So Brent and Chris are going to hit on that. Talk about some of the new content we've got in this year's book. We'll hit on the HQ 100, which is our top 100 fantasy prospect list, and then wrap it up with Q&A. So fun night for you. Chris says, my wife says roll tide. So Chris, congratulations to your wife on the somewhat normal national championship that has come in. And a couple comments on the hair already. So I know we're rocking and rolling. Yes, it's been 10 months now since the last cut, and it looks it. So, all right, we're going to pivot over, talk about this year's book. We're going to dive right in. Brent, I'm going to toss it over to you. And I touched on this kind of a little bit before, but, especially in this year's book, how do you guys evaluate prospects in essentially a lost season?
Yeah, it was certainly, you mentioned like the forecaster live stream we did. We were talking about there. How do you evaluate guys on a 60-game season? And as you said in the intro, I mean, we had on the prospect side, even less than that, obviously. And it's not just the pandemic season, but it's a turbulent sort of time all over baseball in the past several months. You have, of course, the pandemic canceled the season. Related to that, the MLB cut back their draft to just 5 rounds. So like the incoming group of new prospects was quite a bit smaller. And then the whole background of Major League Baseball, taking over and reorganizing or contracting the minor leagues. that's still all in process, although it looks like we're closer to a resolution there. All of those things are, contribute to kind of this just crazy, wacky time. And as I mentioned in the introduction to the book, I mean, we at one point were just talking about from our perspective as Baseball HQ during the shutdown, or once actually things got started, and we knew there would be a regular season, but at that point we knew there wouldn't be a minor league season. What are we going to do? How are we going to respond with the site and with the forecaster, our other book, and of course the Minor League Analyst, which I think was one of the more difficult things, because over the years, one of the features of the book has been, our 900 plus player boxes that have commentaries written on each player, different skills grades, all sorts of information as far as biographical information, what we think their projected role in the major leagues is going to be, player grade, all of this stuff. And of course, it's all based on we try to get the most recent reports, either from our own in-person evaluation, through some video, through various contacts that we trust and have built up over the years, and all that is gone with the gone year. So we, in deciding what to do, we came to a conclusion pretty early that one of the important things for us anyway, is going to be to kind of default back to the 2020 version of the book, or in other words, a year ago, when we had, the most recent reports and statistics on guys. And while we were not just gonna just rerun those, we would update those with some information that we could. That was always going to be our kind of backbone and foundation. So that led to us realizing that, even if we changed some things, the book was going to look different. We weren't sure exactly if we weren't sure if actually doing a print copy is a good thing, and we had seen some rise in our sales of the PDF version that came out. So we decided just to do a PDF version this year, given all that's going on, and we'll go from there. It's kind of our intention to get back to the paper copy. I know myself and a lot of other people have said, that's really, the paper and ink copy is the best. You kind of can, you're used to flipping through that and all. But we'll kind of see how that works out. But most importantly, I think, is kind of the decision for us that as we do these ratings and evaluations, that we're leaning heavily on the work that we've done a year ago, again, when we had all of that stuff at our fingertips. And I think throughout our online, the organizational reports that we've done that lead up to this point that just ended last week, and the release of the book, I think we did a good job of kind of reorganizing a couple things, keeping, leaning on the great content that we've had with the great writers and analysts over the years, and put out a product that we can be proud of, and it also helps people prepare for the fantasy season coming up, whether that's being aware and having a reference point for call-ups throughout the season, or whether it's helping you strengthen your farm systems and your deep keeper and dynasty leagues. So we're pretty stoked with how it came together.
How was it like? So I know obviously there were no like official stats. I saw every now and then grainy videos of Jared Klenick hitting a home run at alternate camp. Was it pretty much radio silence from your contact side throughout this year? Was it really anybody let in, or was it pretty much?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, one of the one of the challenges certainly was even though the teams had the additional roster spots at the alternate sites, those were still closed to the press and closed to other teams. So there was no scouts from other teams, which would normally be at, games throughout the year, writing their own reports for their own clubs. And that wasn't happening at all. So when, and we might talk about this later too, but once we get to this point and there are some reports out of alternate camps about this player or that player, still a lot of those things are coming from the player's team themselves, which, Chris and I will tell you, we always find, that finding you get more credible information talking to another team scout who covers the whatever Rangers, as part of his assignment, rather than someone in the Rangers organization themselves. Not all the time, but Chris, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, this year it became very apparent very quickly that any sort of data or supplier, as I put it, just became a premium. Getting stats, getting tracking data from the alternate training site. Luckily, one of my contacts was nice enough to share. I was able to get some of that data also from some team sources. And then when Instructional League started, I got really lucky. I had one of my contacts see 5 of my teams in Arizona. No, 4 of the 5 teams in Arizona. So, it was good. And then, my whole goal was trying to find somebody else that saw them, or, we're a close-knit community. So, I also talked to some of the other writers at other places to see what they got, exchanging information. We all get different information from different places. Some of us have the same contacts. A lot of my contacts started from other sites. So, that kind of thing does happen. That was the main goal that I had this year, was to try to accumulate as much information as quick as possible. And luckily, I'm friendly, and people were nice enough to help me.
You are a friendly guy.
Thank you.
that blessing charm goes a long way sometimes. We got that out at First Pitch Arizona, so that always helps. So with that, Brent, to build down that a little bit, with no games, with the player boxes themselves, we kind of use, like you said, 2020 as the starting point, because that was the last really time that we had with them.
Right. Yeah. So we were, again, trying to figure out sort of how to do that, what would be a way with integrity to kind of display that, or what, or communicate that, excuse me. And we realized that, throughout the major league season, there was a good handful of rookies, of prospects that came up and played in the majors, obviously. Some of them, made big jumps, and you could sort of say, well, most likely in a normal year, they wouldn't have made that jump, but whatever the reason, they did. And, that's what we as kind of fantasy players are most interested in, how these players that we see coming up through the minors, how they're actually going to perform in these situations against the best competition in the world. That's what we find out about that in those situations, is what's going to form, what kind of player they become and how they contribute to our fantasy teams. So what we did is, after, we put some small minimums on there, but basically took any player that was in last year's book, in the 2020 book, that played in the major leagues in 2020, but is still rookie eligible for 2021. We basically put their new major league MLB stat line in the bottom of their box, and had our writers who normally cover that team basically rewrite the commentary. Now, some of these, were a little tough, because it's a small sample to start with. Maybe you only have 24 innings pitched or something like that. Is there things to glean from that? But on the other hand, again, they are facing major league competition. You have all the standardized data from the StatCast stuff. So if you're, we can be more can be more accurate about a pitcher's arsenal, about as far as velocity, different types of pitches, all that kind of thing. So it wasn't a big group, but we ended up with I think it was 6-7 pages of regular, what looked like regular minor league baseball analyst player pages that were redone with just that bank of MLB stats. The other aspect of that too then is we thought, well, maybe we should just as a reference point, not as a main selling point, but rerun all of the pages that ran, player pages that ran in 2020 as kind of like an appendix. So then you would have backgrounds and the most recent report on all 900 plus of those players. So I'm pretty happy with how that came together. I think it's a good way, and I think it'll be something that the readers and you guys will tell us whether that's helpful or not during the year. So, for instance, if a player gets called up in May or June that did not play at all last year in the majors, you can go to the appendix near the back of the book, still look up his grade, what we gave him a year ago, commentary, specifics about his skill set, what we expect him to do. I think it was a good decision we made with that.
Yeah, I'd just like to add before we get going. I mean, one of the things is like, we're basically evaluating off of practice, because that's I know that there's scrimmages and stuff, but any of the data that I got, any of the tracking data, any of the notes I got, instructionals and the ATS site were essentially just practice. So while and we'll get, I know Brent has a whole section on our team pages, but like if there was a note that I heard during a conversation, that's where I wrote that note. Instead of doing a whole new box, I thought that was that was the best way to cover a guy. And I think that with Brent making that decision early on, it really helped us as writers to kind of move past and move into something new. So I was very happy with and to have that that resource there too. All of our work from the previous year, hopefully will help you make your decisions on draft day, or when the waiver wire or fab comes up during any given week.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you wanted to touch on, Chris, was handling recency bias. I know, like in the at the MLB level for fantasy, we're trying to not put too much weight into 2020 because it was only 60 games. But on the minor league side, how does that flip? And specifically in 2021, or in 2020, how was that different this year than in years past, or how did you handle that?
It really was because we'll go back to the draft. As some people know, I do help out a team. I'm not under contract right now, but I do help out a team during spring training. So they were in their evaluations. Guys were playing most places, except for maybe the Northeast and some of the Northwest. There were eyes. There was some new video on those guys. I could get brand new scouting reports on those guys. And then we also had a bunch of guys going to the major leagues. Guys like Tristan McKenzie, who we haven't seen for almost 2 years, or Dane Dunning, who we haven't seen in 2 years. And you're like, okay, do I really, really like him, or do I not really like him? I think Dane Dunning's a perfect example. I know that I think that was one of Brent's guys, being the Rangers. He was traded from the White Sox. I was glad I didn't have to write him up. But the thing is like Dane Dunning, was a sinker ball pitcher, and he started to throw a four-seamer a lot more. And I don't know if I necessarily like that four-seamer. So I don't know if it was a response that he didn't have a feel for his sinker, or if it was, kind of a new pitch or a new way of going at hitters. Maybe he's trying to stay above the swing plane. We couldn't see that throughout a whole season. We couldn't judge that throughout a whole season. We also had the Tristan McKenzie thing where he kept losing velocity as the season went on. And, what do you do with him? I asked the scout, where do you have him? And he just threw up his hands and was like, I don't really know. I like him as what he showed early in the season. He was like an SP2, SP3. And then it got worse. And, maybe he's just a reliever. Maybe his size won't allow him to, shoulder that blame. So how much do you put into that? Guys that just came off of injury like that, or, you had some performances like Ryan Mountcastle. It's a perfect example of somebody who's climbed up on prospect boards. And I don't think he climbed up on ours because I gave it what I consider a very realistic take of him, that he's really just an average player who got very lucky. And I forget who put it on Twitter, but showed how lucky he was with some of his hits. Whoever did that, if you know that guy, tell him awesome job, because it totally sold my whole argument. The dude was extremely lucky to get where he was, and the forecaster was straight on. I read the forecaster after I had written the player grade change, and they hit it hard. They hit it out of the park.
That was probably Ryan.
Was Mountcastle you?
Wasn't? I don't know.
No, name only. But yeah, he was an interesting case just because everyone was waiting for him, and then Baltimore just kind of kept stalling. What did they know that we don't? And then McKenzie. Go ahead, Chris.
And yeah, that also plays a part. We were talking about getting information from teams and stuff, and I was hearing all this great stuff about Mountcastle, and I saw him debut, and I watched a bunch of his games. I watched about 12 of them to try to get a sense at different points in the season what he was, and what he is he's an average regular, and there's a place for him in fantasy there, but it's just not. I just can't put him at the levels of the next great power hitter. I just don't see it. And that's one of the things that's what makes this hard when you only see a certain amount of people, or you only have this small snapshot. And then the last point that I would make with recency bias is, with the draft, evaluating the 3 top pitchers in the draft, and specifically we'll talk about, starting this year was Emerson Hancock. Emerson Hancock. That was the top guy. And, he pitched 4 starts, and it wasn't really that impressive. So how much do you really put into that? Asa Lacy, that's pretty good. AC/DC. Asa Lacy, that he looked dominant in his few starts. And then, you got the kid from Minnesota that I'm skipping on his name, that I think is one of the top right-handed pitchers. It must be the beer.
Max Meyer.
Thank you, Max Meyer. Max Meyer. The more I watched him, the more I evaluated his tape, the more I saw some of his data. The more another prospect writer tried to convince me that he was the next great thing. I'll be honest, he kind of looks the part. He might be. Him and Sanchez are the top 2, of any organization, including San Diego. Or, Patino's been traded, so I guess that's different now. But really and truly, he's either the second or third or fourth best right-handed pitcher on our list, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. One other quick thing about the whole lost year thing is just, it's really interesting to me too now, and I'm sure this will happen throughout as spring training gets rolling. You hear more about players, and this is, not just prospects, but also across the board, about how the year affected them. There was just saw something this week about, Yohan Moncada had COVID, and that was something that was new to me, and we didn't have in the forecaster at all. There was an article this week here in the on the Athletic on the Phillies that talked about Spencer Howard losing 10 pounds over the shutdown, because he for whatever it wasn't able to work out. So there's going to be, and obviously he underperformed what I certainly thought, and I think a lot of us also thought. I think there's going to be a lot of those types of things that come out, that we learn about, that will explain different things, and it's just it's just you try to adjust in your evaluation with that information and kind of move ahead as best you can.
And talking to contacts at instructionals, kids were facing different competitions. Usually you have, mainly your lower minor guys at instructionals. So you had some squads. Some days were all advanced guys. Some days they were all lower level guys. And then you had some teams that meshed them all together. Yeah. And one of the things that kept getting pointed out to me, other than the competition, was the fitness level of guys. Yeah. There was in Arizona at one of the camps, a utility player came back like 30, 40 pounds heavier after essentially telecommuting via Zoom. And not a big name or anything, but like he was somebody that had, some scouts, assigned major league upside to, and, that kind of thing happens. So like, how much do you weigh in that or the social economic situation guys from Latin American countries had to deal with? I mean, you just really don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point at the end there, Chris. It's like, who had access to what facilities, or what, you almost go into that kind of equity lens in terms of who is able to even work out during the shutdown, who doesn't have anything to work with, and how that affects. And then kind of, Brent, to what you were saying, even in the major league level, there's information gaps for, like you said, Moncada. All of a sudden we find out that he had COVID. That's even more of a challenge, I would think, at the minor league level, when you get like an outlier performance like that, someone at the alternate camp, where they don't need to, tell anybody that they got it or whatever was affecting them. And digging for that information is even tougher. So yes, yet another reason why I'm not a prospect expert like you two. But all right, so I want to switch gears a little bit and take some of you all through. Hopefully, we'll see if we have any Texas Ranger fans in the chat here in the crowd, because we're going to focus on Texas, at least as an example for the team pages. And I believe it was, Shane in the comments said that he loved the format of the new team prospect pages. And I think they came out really well. We're going to have Brent walk you through Texas just as a template for what they look like. So let me switch over real quick to them.
Bear down.
Yeah, and it's and we don't necessarily don't need to read through the whole thing, but just an idea of what this is. The first thing on the left there is just our top 15 prospects. This corresponds with what our organization reports run on the site. In lieu of having player boxes for each one of these guys, I encouraged our writers, as they were putting together these pages specifically, and also, knowing who they would be writing about for the new player boxes, to kind of, the best they can, sort of cover as many of those guys as you can, even with a couple sentences, and pull that out. So you'll see that in the top 15 list there, any guys with sort of those asterisks are guys that have a full player box, a new player box. In other words, they played, they got some MLB time. So it happens that Tavares and Apostol and Huff and Dane Dunning and Tejada's on that list. This is one of the ones, just incidentally, that has more players that have full player boxes, new player boxes. They each get our grade, and again, I really encourage all of us to to just stick with the same grade, unless we have a really a really compelling reason, or there's some sort of data element or something that changes that. And if we change those grades at all from last year, again, just given the short season, that they're very minor changes. So you'll see some of those guys, and for the most part, those are ordered similar to what they were last year, although there's some changes again to there because some guys have graduated, some new guys have been drafted in. And then if you just scroll down below that top 15, we just have three separate kind of quick player profiles: a player to watch in the top 10, a player to watch in that 11 to 15 range, and then something, just a couple sentences about a player to watch that's not on the list. I know that we have people from that play in all different types of formats, and some of them are really deep, and they might be interested in anyone in kind of getting a first shout out to a name that could be on the top 15 in a year or two or something like that. So I thought that was a fun kind of way to do. And this one is on Luis Angel Acuna, which is Ronald Jr.'s little brother. Just came over from the Dominican and had a great Dominican Summer League in 2019. And actually he is making some of the other top prospect lists. Then on the right-hand side, I thought, because we often every year include, it's up to the writers who are responsible for each team to determine that, but often there are a handful of new draftees from the summer before that get player boxes. I thought we would do just a quick section where, since there was only 5 rounds, we list all 5 for most teams, their picks, and then do just a quick synopsis of the skills for each of those guys. Obviously with more attention to the top guys, because they're more likely to matriculate into major leaguers, but also covering a sentence or two on the other guys, because we know some of those do pop up. So we have a skills recap kind of section of that, and then below just kind of convert that into some fantasy aspect. And so it's one it's one way, I think, to kind of gather all these small pieces of information about a certain club, Texas in this case, put it all in one spot, give you some estimated times. The ETAs is kind of when we project or know that they'll make their major league debut, and of course give them the grade, which I know a lot of you all use in your selecting of players. And I think we got some good feedback on that, and I'm glad to hear it in the chat too. And I think it's a good comprehensive way, 1 page per team. One writer writes the whole, has written the whole page, and that it's just a good way to synopsize everything for this year.
Yeah, it's a great snapshot for every single team. You get to, like you said, Brent, some of these dynasty leagues that folks are in are super, super deep. So, I'm in currently it's 20 teams, 40-man rosters, and anybody in the top 10 of most of these organizations is already gone. So being able to kind of dig into players that are even off the list, or 11 through 15, very helpful for some of us. So I want to pivot back to, and Chris, I'm going to swing it back to you.
All right.
Talk about first-year player draft. And again, a little bit different this year, but want to introduce those rankings for us.
Yeah, so like we, for several years we've heard, one of the things we've heard at the site and with the book is, where are your first-year player rankings? And, I'll be honest, I've never really been the biggest fan of first-year player draft rankings. And the reason for that is it's available information. For instance, last year, we had some information on some of the international guys after they signed, like Eric Pena and Maximo Acosta, who got seen by scouts at at the instructional site. But other guys like Jason Dominguez and Robert Poulsen, they weren't seen. They didn't appear at their instructional sites. I mean, Baseball America covered the one epic at bat that Jason Dominguez had in the Dominican. I guess it was a complex instructional league scrimmage. So like that's all we had on some of these guys. So I've always kind of been a little, I guess the word is cautious when coming up a first-year player draft. So this year I just kind of decided I wanted to really knock one out of the ballpark and try it and see how people liked it and how people reacted to it. And of course, we had several things that were working against me. Draft was only 5 rounds. We had very limited data on even the draft guys outside of the showcase circuit in the summertime. So like, I mean, it was hard. Throw in the international free agents who signed in a couple days. They haven't even signed yet. We're covering them in this book and they haven't even signed yet. So it was an interesting process to get through. And, I'll be honest, I'm kind of motivated. I was kind of motivated by my competition. I feel like my competition, which I have a lot of good competition, I feel like they fall in love with tools instead of the process of getting a guy to a certain place. And so I went at my first year player rankings to rank getting a guy to a certain place, essentially. So like, I had, for instance, Spencer Torkelson was the number 1 overall guy. And I think throughout everybody has him 1. But then my number 2 was the guy that's pictured right there, Ha-Sung Kim. I practiced this several times. I knew I was going to mess this up. I hate pronunciations, and it's probably the reason why I get so nervous, and I'll probably be loose for the rest of the time. But yes, Kim, most places probably have him a little further down because he's not really a sexy guy. Well, I don't know, sexy looks wise, but like he's not a sexy prospect. He just has a solid hit tool, pretty much a average power, and he can run some. But the thing is projecting him out with the Padres, he is going to, essentially like be a solid, regular to start out with. And that's something that like there's value in that, because we could be talking about like somebody like Christian Hernandez, who's supposed to sign with the Cubs, a shortstop. And, we love him. I mean, quick twitch athlete, great hit tool. I loved watching his videos. I watched as many videos as I could possibly find. But the thing is he's 16. He might be 17 now. But he was 16 when he was supposed to sign on July 2nd. And like, those type of guys, I just kind of got tired of seeing them up in the list because it's just hard. I see that question for Kim. Kim is was a shortstop. I'm assuming that Tatis is going to be the shortstop for the Padres. So I would assume that he moves over to second, which probably moves around some other guys too. So like this is. Who knows? I've heard he might even play some outfield too. So he might be somebody to give you a, multi-positional type deal. But yeah, he signed with the Padres, and they already have their shortstop, and Tatis isn't going anywhere from that position. So he will not be playing shortstop for them. So yeah, my rankings are a little bit tilted to getting to a guide to a process. And I use an example in this section of Zach Veen. Zach Veen, in a lot of people's eyes, was the top prep draft pick in this last draft. And I talked to some pro contacts in instructional league, and I also did my own evaluation. And I watch him, and he's a Rockies outfield prospect, and left-handed hitting Rockies outfield prospect, and everybody has these stars because they can't imagine this. This guy with 70 grade power on a 2080 scale, possibly going to Coors Field. And I think that we've been blinded by that. I don't think the hit tools is as advertised. I have some concerns on swing and miss. I also have concerns on using the entire field. He's very, very pull conscious player. Everything that I've seen from game action that I luckily got from somebody, and then the showcase stuff, which is pretty much what we scouted these guys on this year. There's some issues I have with him, using the whole field for that hit tool. So like, I can squint and see an all-star, projection on him, but more than likely, the high projection form is probably a solid regular. And people always ask if our rankings ever reflect the organization a guy is in, and I'll be honest, now they do. I don't have confidence in the Rockies developing Zach Veen because I haven't seen it lately. They have not developed the left-handed bat for a while. I guess the last one was Charlie. So like, David Dahl, I mean, maybe that was some injury involved and stuff, but like David Dahl was, I like David Dahl a lot better when he was drafted compared to Zach Veen, to be honest. So I wanted to get more of the process in this, and I wanted to get you to think more about, okay, this guy might have been drafted by a team that's, not really good at developing guys. And another perfect example of this is Cole Wilcox. He wasn't on my original list, and he got elevated on here because I believe in the Rays pitching development, and I don't necessarily believe in the Padres pitching development. We saw Luis Patino this year. We even saw, Chris Paddock took a step back. The rumors, nobody really wants to talk about it, by the way, but the rumors are saying that Mackenzie Gore backed up too. So like, Cole Wilcox going to the Padres wasn't as attractive of him going to the Rays in that trade. So like that reflected in my rankings, and maybe that's not reflected on other people's rankings, but I do believe it's extremely important.
One of the things I really like, Chris, and for those listening, Chris's rankings page 13 to 15, but not to get like too negative here, but I did enjoy, because all you hear about is first year player draft is how great all these guys are and how much ceiling and potential they have. What you added in, it was what I thought was really interesting, what you called a pessimistic take, which is kind of like what could go wrong with each of these guys. And it was just an interesting thing, like just to see what their floor is. So like, for example, Austin Martin, who all I heard about was how did he fall in the draft? Toronto, got a gift. You rank him number 5. I mean, that's a really good rank, but pessimistic take is, what if the home runs never come? The power doesn't develop. He slides off shortstop and then essentially becomes a third baseman without power. You're not saying that's who he's going to be, but that's within the range of outcomes that you don't really hear a lot when talking about the first year player draft. So I thought that was a nice wrinkle.
Thank you. And to just jump on that Martin, factoid there is he didn't play shortstop in college last year. There's some question marks. There's some serious question marks of, they're going to say that it's versatility, and somebody was better than him at shortstop. That's what happened. And it's very rare that a guy gets moved off a position and doesn't eventually get moved off that position again when they get higher up in the major leagues or in the minor leagues. Nick Madrigal was drafted as a shortstop, I believe. He had moved to second base at Oregon State for the Grenier kid, who was a phenomenal defender, can't hit. He's in the Orioles organization. But like, there's usually a reason why the dude gets moved.
Ryan Mountcastle was a shortstop, right?
Yep.
Drafted as a shortstop.
Now he may only be a DH.
It's like all the way to the other end.
Yeah.
I mean, and I want to just say too. I mean, I think trying to figure out or put some more thought into, as we've tried to do, kind of that team side developmental aspect, kind of what the team has had success with. And it's tricky because people in player development move around, and new GMs come in and change, and so it's hard to track. But to try to at least have that be a part of the evaluations we give, I think is a very important point, and I think it makes what our philosophy of kind of here's the information, and it's similar to that pessimistic take, kind of, here's extra information. Then you, the fantasy player, can kind of, your league, your preferences on types of players. Then, you have more information to kind of make that call, those picks. So I just want to echo that. I think we're going to try to continue that thought process as we go forward with some of our future rankings and evaluations.
Makes sense. That Rocky's example was a good one. Nice Charlie Blackmon.
Yeah, they're never going to hire me. They're never going to hire me. Like and to be honest, the day that I decided not to seek employment in the major leagues anymore, it was the day that I just kind of was like, I'm just going to kind of let it fly with that kind of stuff. And I've had one team actually tell me that they appreciate the criticism. So, maybe someone doesn't hate me. So that's good.
We don't hate you.
We don't.
I know you don't. But yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
All right, Brent, take this one over real quick. Just kind of some of the draft coverage for 2021.
Sure. Yep. Like you said, we'll just do it quick. We always in each book have a bunch of the past years. Try to get folks ready. Especially as we think about not everyone reading this as like a full bore kind of prospect hound. So we try to say, here's a dozen guys from college, from the college games that you should sort of know about. I mean, these are the most likely guys that are going to be whatever, first, second rounders come the draft in the summer. And we have a writer, Chris Lee, who's been doing this for us for a bunch of years. And so Chris gives us like 12, 16 college names to know. And it's really interesting. Those of you that have a couple older books a couple years ago, it's really interesting to pull out that page and look at some of the guys that were, back at that time kind of, and it's the guys that are just ready to be just eligible to be ready in the following summer's draft. And like I just did that real quick, and like in 2018 in this article were Nick Madrigal, Brady Singer, Casey Mize, Shane McClanahan, Alec Boehm, Logan Gilbert, and Jackson Kowar. By now, 4 years later, all those guys are 3 years later, all those guys are, either in the majors or would be an asset to you if they were in your farm system. So anyway, that's something to check out. And the added thing this year is Chris also did basically the same sort of article, but for the prep ranks, in other words, the high schoolers. And with both of these, and it's again the same sort of thing, short profiles of about a dozen guys. And we put these names out there knowing that full well that they have a full season both on the prep and pro side to play, that those rankings or those players emerge, and some of them don't do well. But it's just a way again to sort of get your eyes on, or get your ears familiar with a couple of the guys that will be, drafted high, and most likely you'll draft them into your farm systems at some point down the line. And the last,
go ahead.
I was going to say the last really interesting thing that we had, that Chris Lee, who does is familiar with the college game, covers it down at Vanderbilt. He interviewed the Vanderbilt head coach. His name's Tim Corbin, he's one of the most long-standing, most respected college baseball coaches in the NCAA. And we had him do an interview about basically how the pandemic is going to affect college baseball. And there's some really interesting thoughts that Tim Corbin had, and Chris did a really good job of asking some questions about that. Chris Blessing then did a quick kind of couple paragraphs at the very end, tying it back into what it might mean for us as fantasy players. But it was just a really unique thing that we were glad to have a part of, and I think a lot of you guys will find interesting in reading that. So that's that's our preview that we give a little bit of time to in each publication to the upcoming MLB draft, which will be next July.
Yeah, definitely check out page 19 of the book. And I've kind of been, as we've been talking, putting those in the comments, which page some of Chris Lee's stuff. But page 19 is that interview with Vandy's head coach. And Lee does a great job for us and is well connected with Vanderbilt, which is a good college baseball program to be well connected with. So
yes,
nice wrinkle in the 21 book. So be sure to check that out on page 19. All right. Switching gears a little bit. We posted this last Monday?
On Monday, part of our crazy week. Yes, it went up on Monday. I just want to do a quick intro. The HQ 100 is our sort of top 100 prospect list. We take special pride and care in that it's always from a fantasy perspective. It runs for us at the site. And we, the past several years, have released that on the site the same day that the actual book comes out, because it's also in the book. And I think a couple things that make it unique, like I said, is it's definitely our writers are approaching their lists from a fantasy perspective, and we each of us do our own individual top 100 lists, and then we combine those to get a list that becomes the HQ 100. This year we had 8 of us contribute to that. It includes Chris, myself, Alec Dopp, Rob Gordon, Jeremy Deloney, who all write the player boxes on our assigned teams for that. This year we were joined by 3 others, HQ staffers, that help out on the minor league side or the keeper league side, and that's Nick Richards, Matthew St. Germain, and Jock Thompson. So there's 8 lists that go basically into this HQ 100, and it's always a fun thing to put together. We're going to have a couple roundtable discussions tomorrow and Friday on the site about that, which are always fun to put together and see, as there's some sort of banter and people making their case for different guys where they are back and forth, and it's usually pretty illuminating. So anyway, we're going to talk about some specifics here of what Chris and I had to go, what's some specifics of Chris and I's list here as we go.
That's so Brent, you mentioned that's got to be interesting. You combine the 8 lists, and so you guys are way high or way low on somebody compared to the rest of the crowd. So I can always see how that's surprising. One last thing on the HQ 100, and I believe we put it in this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but will we take a look back at the previous maybe 6 years of HQ 100s, and those are always fun to.
Yeah, there's 8 in the book. Yes, there's always in the book. Yes, there's always the last 8 years of the top 100 lists. And if you want a good chuckle, head back to whenever it was 20. One of the ones pretty far back, and you'll realize just how difficult this whole ranking evaluation thing is.
Oh yeah, transparency and accountability. At least we'll take that. But,
yep.
All right, so we just want to talk about, and Jason, I got your question, so we'll get to that as well. Some of those surprising rankings that you guys have, higher, way lower than the average. Chris, I'll start with you. If we just want to hit on maybe 2 guys each that you found you were way higher on or way lower than, and you can definitely, if you want to reveal their top 100 for the chat, that's totally cool.
Okay, awesome. I think, the number one thing, I wanted to pick one pitcher and one hitter, but I ended up picking 2 pitchers. But one on the why is he so high and why is he so low? And really and truly, the guy that's low, which is only at the 32nd ranking, and that's Grayson Rodriguez, who's the Orioles' number 2 overall prospect behind Adley Rushman, the catcher. But my thinking on, I see the list, and I have the list in front of me right now, and see the starting pitchers in front of Grayson Rodriguez. We've got guys like Forrest Whitley, who's my other choice, and Nate Pearson, and Michael Kopech, and Matt Manning, and Spencer Howard. We've got these guys ahead of Grayson Rodriguez where I just don't think they're in his league. Yes, a lot of those guys are closer to the major leagues, but like I really feel like Grayson Rodriguez could be the SP1 of those, of that grouping of pitchers. So like to see him 32nd when we have Forrest Whitley at 18 and Nate Pearson at 19, was very surprising. And we'll get into that during our roundtable at the site, because some of the writers that did rank him high talk about why they ranked Forrest Whitley high. So I don't want to give it all away with him. But I'm going to kind of transition just a bit to Nate Pearson, and I'm talking about process and getting a guy to a certain place. And we saw Pearson, if you were at first pitch, the last time we had it, which seems like a decade ago at this point, we got to see Nate Pearson pitch. We got to see him throw 103. We got to see him do all of this stuff. But watching him, I'm just not convinced he can get to the SP1, SP2, or SP3, ranking. Be one of those guys, that upside, because the control's just not there, and he doesn't have much time on the mound in his career. So, looking at a guy like Nate Pearson, I'm just, I had him in the 70s, and he's in our top 20, and just, kind of I don't know how he gets there. I see where he is. I see the SP1 potential, but I just don't see how he's anything more than probably a reliever at this point if next year he doesn't, take that step forward.
So you had Grayson Rodriguez, Chris, at 32, and you had Pearson in the 70s?
Yeah, I mean, 32 on the ranking. I don't remember what I had him, Grayson Rodriguez, but I kind of took, in one of our writers, Jock Thompson, a few years ago, mentioned how he doesn't really rank pitching that high on fantasy prospect list. And I kind of, sorry, that comment made me laugh there. Good job, Tom. But yes, it's more about the pitchers in front of Grayson Rodriguez than his ranking, I guess, is where I'm getting at. I just don't see it. I think that even though Rodriguez is not as close as maybe Whitley, and of course not in the major leagues like Pearson, and not been in the major leagues like Kopech, I just don't see how he's behind those guys, Manning and Howard. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I know for sure. Yeah, I know for sure that I have yet to see Rodriguez in person, but that's I should be able to do that this year, and I'm really looking forward to that. My guy that was ranked higher than I thought, though it was surprisingly high, was Atlanta's Christian Pache, and it's not because I don't like him. I just am not sure. I think that ranking is based more on overall baseball value than fantasy value. I think he'll have a decent BA. He's made some changes now, and some power will be there. But there's not going to be. There's very unlikely going to be much from the steals range. He's had some steals in the past, but in the past 2 years he's been caught more times than he's been successful. So I think it's just to think of him as a top 25 player for fantasy again. And Chris may fight me on this, but I don't quite see it. But I'm not going to give him a chance to fight, because the guy that I was surprised it was down that far was the Phillies' first-round pick from this year, Mick Abel. He was in number 97 on this list, and I was just surprised that what a lot of people see as the best right-handed and best prepared right-handed pitching prospect out of the high school ranks last year wasn't higher. And again, I'm not thinking he's top 50. I just think, and for me, he was in the 60s, I think, something like that, which is, just something which I had assumed he would be higher. He's got, great size, a better, really good command for a high schooler, a fastball slider combination that, that a lot of people said was the best. The slider was the best breaking ball out of the prep class this year, and has some physical projection left. He's 6'5", 190, so he can put on some. There's some room on that frame yet. I was just it's just someone that I was surprised it wasn't higher on that list, as opposed to kind of just making it over the threshold.
And I think that's because people are scared of prep arms. That's where that's at. They're scared of prep arms. I mean, Nick Bitsko is another guy that could fall in. I mean, they were, talking to club contacts, they were like 1-2 in the prep rankings. Everybody had them a little different, and you also have that anti-Phillies bias. That's
I know.
That's in there.
That's what I'm here to even out.
You got to neutralize that. I was going to say that. Cool. So Christian Pache, surprised he was that high, and then on the flip side, Brent Abel, surprised he was that low. All right. Next up on the HQ100, prospect outside the top 25, who could be a top 5 guy in the 17th edition of Minor League Baseball Analyst in 2022.
I'll go first. I think the one thing I want to say is the question itself, the top 5 is pretty tough to get to. It's a lofty thing to get to. But the one guy I think that's being overlooked some that maybe, if everything goes right, could get there is Toronto shortstop Jordan Groshans. He's a first rounder in 2018, a bigger kind of shortstop with a strong arm that can stay at the position, a sound defender, puts the bat on the ball real well, has kind of natural all fields power. I think the thing is suppressing him a little bit is he had started out really hot in low A in 2019 in the Midwest League, had a foot injury, I think early May that pretty much kept him out all year. So he hasn't played, in almost 2 full years. But I think all the reports you hear about him are that it's healed up, and they're excited to kind of get him back in the lineup. And it's sort of an all-around shortstop, I think, that does have that sort of explosive possibility to climb up a list. To climb up that many rungs up the list.
And that's a Toronto shortstop. Going to bring this back to what we were talking about before. We've got 2 of them in the top 50. We were talking about Austin Martin before. Maybe there is a top 5 Toronto shortstop, and maybe it is not Austin Martin this time next year. That's really interesting. Chris, what do you got for a top 5 potential for 2022?
Yeah, this would have been a good segue after Brent knocked our ranking on Christian Pache. But Corbin Carroll is what every fantasy prospect analyst wants Christian Pache to be. I mean, I'm just going to put it that way. I have him as my number 1 ranked guy in the D-backs, which is, Alec did our D-back list. And Alec went with Christian Robinson, which, he made a great argument for that. And a lot of people, when I said this on Twitter, made great arguments why Christian Robinson should have been number 1 in my mind. But I went with Corbin Carroll, who we have ranked 34th. And the reason why I think he's a top 5 guy is we get so consumed with these toolsier guys like Christian Robinson and, George Valera is another one that, their home run swings are beautiful, but there's some serious hit tool concerns with these type of guys. With Corbin Carroll, his the foundation of his whole package is his hit tool. And this is a guy that's learning how to hit for power, learning how to get loft on balls, learning how to work different, work power to different fields. He's always been kind of an all-around type hitter. He does things that, as my buddy Ralph from Prospects Live told me, he does things that are kind of once in a generation type things. He's going to be a guy that fills up all of these categories if everything comes to fruition. And he might be the best prospect in, maybe a on-base percentage type format. This guy does everything well, and while he doesn't do anything exceptional, the reason why he's so good and why he's probably an exceptional fantasy prospect is the whole sum of all of those parts.
While you're talking about Corbin Carroll there, Chris, and one of the things I like, and this is page 65 of the book, is we kind of break out some of the top prospects by skill. So top power, top batting average, top speed for pitchers, top fastball, and breaking ball. Corbin Carroll looks like a top 10 prospect for batting average. So that kind of speaks to what you were talking about with the hit tool. And like you said, that's not even accounting for OBP leagues. So interesting on Corbin Carroll, and we'll have you and Alec fight that out for the top spot of
Alec is 100% right on his thing. I know where Alec was coming from. It's the same place that a lot of other people are coming from. I even heard in their own organization they have Robinson ahead of Carroll. Hey, more power to them.
Yep. And not to get too far off, but like the difference, I'm looking at the grades of those two guys. Christian Robinson is a 9D. Corbin Carroll is an 8B. So what we're thinking there, what Alec's thinking there is Christian Robinson has a higher potential with that 9, but maybe a little bit less percent chance of getting to it with that D grade. Whereas Corbin Carroll 8B, that's not, maybe doesn't have the ceiling of a Christian Robinson, but a pretty darn good chance of getting to his reaching his potential. So pretty kind of cool juxtaposition between those two guys at the top. So all right, next up, HP100 trivia, or not trivia, but Q&A. Please name the number 56 ranked HP. No, I'm just kidding.
I had it on that page.
Prospect outside the top 75 with the best chance at an all-star outcome.
Yeah, I'll go first. Number 89, Bo Naylor. And if you're a HQ subscriber, you're going to hear plenty about that in one of our little discussions about this. Because this is a guy that I elevated pretty high, and I elevated mostly to start out with on second half type stats, what we were seeing. I get distracted on these questions. Alex coming.
Alex is here.
I knew he was watching. I just was trying to whatever. But yeah, I went with Naylor because he brought those skills that he improved during the second half, and he improved things like essentially. His quality of contact. He rarely expands the zone. He's become very aggressive within the zone for his pitch and stuff. His barrel ball rate at the end of 2019 was a lot better than what it was at the beginning of 2019. And then he went over to the alternate training site, and at the ATS, all of those just lit up. So we got to see essentially a maturation, even though we didn't get to see him. And just talking to, there's some organizations that are a little more, honest with me than others. Just hearing what the Indians were saying about him was kind of, you kind of looked at the that batted ball data, and it just, it all came together. So I went with him. I think he was in my top 30. So him getting 89 meant that, 5 of the other rankers didn't even rank him. So
probably wasn't even on the list. Yep. All right, cool. Josh Naylor, top 40 prospect for Mr. Blessing. So keep that one in mind. Brent, switch back to you.
Yep. I went with a pitcher, which is, I certainly acknowledge that pitchers getting an all-star outcome are a little, might be a little easier path. But I'm going to talk about just a little bit about Edward Cabrera for the Marlins. Had a great 2019 season. I think was really getting some love there. Has a mid-90s fastball with sink, and adds a good curveball and changeup there. There's still some projection left on that frame, and I think you have to like what Miami's building there. Even though with their options, and even if he eventually does slot behind Sixto and Max Meyer, I think there'll be some. I think there's a chance that there'll be some all-star seasons there out of Edward Cabrera. 21 years old, so I think there's good time ahead yet for him.
Cool. All right, and then we'll flip one more, and then we'll go to the. We got a couple more. And then we'll flip to Q&A. So, favorite prospect that's not even on the list of the HQ 100. And I will say that Alec is in the chat here. Alec has an entire piece on this in the MLB and has had for the last few years with a bunch of names that do not show up on the 100 list, but could very well be.
Yeah, it's always a good good article we do that Alex takes care of for us, of those guys that either just missed or kind of are down the list, or maybe younger, that are able to jump up. The guy I want to highlight is Pittsburgh right-handed pitcher Quinn Priester. He's a first rounder in 2019. I got a really glowing report on him from someone that Solomon Instructs. He's a 6'3", 195 build with a really clean delivery, and the thing that this contact talked about was just his mound presence and advanced command. I mean, like, just far beyond what you normally see out of someone that young. Again, just pitching for part of a season professionally. Did most of 2019 in the Gulf Coast League, the Complex League in Florida. So this will be 2021 will be his first full season league, but his stuff was huge. This contact said curveball well above average, and even though he's young, is someone that could move along quickly. So I think Quinn Priester, again, right-hander for the Pirates, is someone to watch. Although, if we're going with the whole development sort of thing, there's not been a good track record there. Although, again, there's some new blood in that front office also. So.
Yep. And we don't know how someone like Jamison Tyon, if he didn't get sidetracked a little bit there. But anyway, Chris, favorite prospect off HQ 100?
Yeah, I was going to give a shout out to Alec because literally three of the four guys that I kind of put down for this were already in that article. I got a glowing report on Andy Pages in Instructs this year. I love George Kirby. I had him ranked pretty high on my list. And the Thomas kid with Pittsburgh is another dude that's just, everybody's kind of talking about him. We didn't even have him ranked in our top 15, but it was late into this, I started hearing a lot of chatter about him. And sadly, we already published it, and I couldn't tell the writer on that. But there was a lot of chatter coming out of Florida this year on him. But the guy that I went with was Michael Bush, a Dodgers second baseman. Bush was drafted out of UNC. He was mainly played first base and outfield. And Bush, came to the pros and proceeded to get injured. Broke a bone, I think, in his hand. And his season was basically non-existent in 2019. One of the great things looking at data. One of the guys that really lit up the data at the ATS was Michael Busch. And then in instructs, he was pretty much the best player in instructs from my Arizona contact that I talked to. Just was tremendous throughout. And why he kind of got done, why he didn't make our list. I had him ranked 48th is because there just wasn't any information out there on him. Because he only had, I think it was like 10 games as a pro before he broke a bone. So like, for me, I like him as a great hit tool. But I also like the fact that he's probably going to hit for, maybe 25 plus home runs and, with a high average. They've had success with guys like this, moving guys to second base to get them playing time and stuff.
Yeah.
And, the Dodgers are phenomenal at developing guys. So, I went with Michael Busch because that was the only guy Alec didn't have of the guys that I came up with.
Very good.
All right, last but not least, and then we'll get to some Q&A. Dogs barking, we like that. Favorite sleeper prospect with chance at HQ 100 ranking next year. These are the deep guys that I need to know about.
Yeah, the guy, I'm not going to spend much time on him because and I'll tell you what the quote I got from Marlins instructional camp, and go check out the Marlins page. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's a pretty good farm system, but I had a scout tell me the best position player at instructs, and mind you, some of the major league guys weren't there, but JJ Bleday was there. The best guy was this kid that was shortstop who signed last year, international free agent, Jose Salas. My contact has him, hitting with power to come. But like he was kind of the dude that kind of made the most noise at Marlins camp.
Guy I'll mention is someone you quickly mentioned before too. Also a an 18-year-old kind of bonus baby from 2019. It's Texas shortstop Maximo Acosta. There's been 2 years now of instructional league that he's been in, 2019 and 2020, and the reports have been very similar. A physical, powerful, short swing, a really advanced approach in the box, foot speed to translate into some stolen bases, kind of is a shortstop with a kind of on the field awareness to be able to stay there, and really a leader, and kind of confident in who he is, from the makeup side or whatever. So I think again he's not had any stateside professional at bats yet. Possibly he could be given the tools and the way they talk about him. It might not be surprising to see him at a full season league by the end of the year. But Maximo Acosta is someone I think we need to, just a name to know about as we head into 2022.
And just to take it kind of full circle, that goes back to our Texas Rangers screenshot that we talked about before. And Brent, you had Acosta on that, the player to watch in the top 10
right.
for Texas, despite not having that stateside experience. So awesome. Really good information. A lot of good names to know. I hope everyone is writing those down. If not, we can play this thing back on our YouTube channel. So with that, I want to open it up for some Q&A. We've got a few minutes here, and if you guys have any questions on anything that we talked about, either just process or approach-wise with the book, individual players, we can go that route as well. Did want to hit on Jason's question, and it kind of Jason Kaiser, who asked, when we first brought up the HQ 100, is this is kind of a question you ask every year. Wander Franco, number one. Pretty much consensus prospect. How much of a gap is Wander Franco compared to like the guys from 2 through 6? Is it massive? Is it a no-brainer, or could he get caught?
Yeah, I think that all 8 of us agreed that Franco was our number 1 prospect. Number 2 was different on almost everybody's list. To say that there was distance between that, I think that's a fair estimate. I know some people might have him as we gave him a 10C or 10D. I forget what the exact grade was. But a 10C is a grade that we don't normally give. We don't give that Hall of Fame type upside to anybody, really. These are, it's reserved for the Acunas of the world. There is a good separation with him. He's not a perfect prospect by any means. His launch angle at the ATS was, I don't know, I think it was like 2 something. There's still parts of his package that need to come. We need to see some swing trajectory to, get some loft on the ball. Right now he's a deadly hit tool, but with that power, that's how he becomes the elite guy, is adding that power. He certainly hits the ball extremely hard. So he's not a perfect prospect, but he is by far the best that we've got right now.
Anything to add there, Brent?
No, I would pretty much agree. I was interested also, as Chris mentioned, going over the individual lists, how much difference there was at 2. And I'll say we have Adley Rutschman at 2. So there was several people that had him there, obviously. But the fact that that Franco was unanimous, but there were, I think, 5 of the 8 of us had a different player at number 2 kind of addresses some of that question. It's a good one, though.
Yep, absolutely. Next one's for Chris, since this was in your organization. Jose Garcia, shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. We've got a question here, if I'm on the right tab, from Shane. Will he be the starting shortstop in Cincinnati this year? Does he have that, playing time at the major league level? Is a little bit tough to project right now, but does Garcia at least have that ability, or is he that close to be able to start this year for Cincinnati?
I'm not convinced that he's a guy for 2021. Last year we got to see a peak, and he was rather overmatched. He was coming up from high A. He did face some advanced competition in AFL, and he had a phenomenal spring training before everything got stopped. He looked absolutely deadly. But just like any young player that hasn't seen advanced pitching, the breaking ball is a great equalizer to them. And that's essentially what happened to him. It got in his head, and I would imagine he starts out next year in AA. That's where I would put him. I still think his upside is a solid regular, and the Reds are one of those organizations where you really could have ranked any of those top 7 prospects. You could make an argument for a number 1 ranking on any of them. I think I had him 4th or 5th. I can't remember exactly where I had him, but my feeling for him is he's a 2022 asset as a starter.
It's interesting. So I just went to our team page at HQ, and Jose Garcia is currently projected to be the starter in Cincinnati. 75% playing time we've got him for. Take that with a grain of salt with where we're at right now in the offseason and his competition, which consists of Freddie Galvis and Kyle Farmer. We'll see what Cincinnati does. But kind of, Chris, to go to your point, if you don't think he's ready this year, I do wonder if Jose Garcia is announced as a starting shortstop, or if they play service time games with him, call him up a few weeks into the season. That could be, a lot of times while people say this, that's when prospects sometimes are at their peak value. So it's interesting to get your perspective there, Chris, on how he might do this year. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it comes down to he didn't really look good at all. And I understand, I understand why he's ahead of Freddie Galvis right now, But if that's the depth chart coming into the season, Galvis has that job until Garcia is ready. I won't say it's a manipulation of service time. But the Reds were hurting for a shortstop at some portions of last season. And when you're limited to only a certain amount of players at your alternate training site, you go with whoever you think might have the best chance. And with Garcia, I mean, the tools are loud. I mean, the hit tool is phenomenal when it's going. And the fact that he, kind of added launch angle to his game, during the offseason, I think mostly in the second half of 2019, eventually, you can project him as that solid regular thing. Will he ever be a all-star, guy? I don't think so. But 2022 is the only time I would roster him on an MLB roster unless it's a really deep league.
All right, that's all we got in the queue, and we've been going, really good. Hour and a half here of excellent information. So Brent and Chris, thank you guys so much. Oh, we do have one. Oh, we got one in on the cover boy, Ian Anderson.
Oh, okay. I guess that's me too. Here's the thing with him. This is a question I've had with other prospect writers and some scouts as well. I have Ian Anderson's command higher than his control. And what I mean by that, this is a kid that's not afraid to walk a guy. If you watch him pitch, if you watch if you go to his Baseball Savant page, I mean, nothing really spins, nothing really moves. He gets more out of his delivery than most any guy, but his pitches are, having seen him, for 2-3 years, pretty consistently. I don't think he's thrown a ball that thrown 2 balls in a row that didn't go where he wanted them to go. You might miss every so often, of course, but he's very consistent with what his game plan is. So I don't worry about the walks per 9. I understand why people are worried about that. But I think he's comfortable with the walk. And that's just kind of what he's going to be as a major leaguer, because I think he's an SP2. So that's kind of where I'm at.
But that's really interesting too, though, from a fantasy perspective, because obviously, I mean, unless he keeps the hits crazy down, I mean, it's going to affect his whip some. I'm curious where he almost was my guy that was I was surprised he was so high. We have him at 20 on our overall list, and while I may be late to the party and kind of believe in him, it seems like that that has a risk of kind of that recency sort of thing. Oh, well, the last time we saw him he was great. Is he really the 20th best prospect for fantasy in the league right now?
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that point of view. And what I keep on getting back at, I'm going to tell you, and you can, I probably have talked to you about this. I've talked to tons of people about this.
Probably.
Ian Anderson right now is kind of like my obsession.
Yeah, no.
Because I have a 4-year track record and really a last 3 years pretty extensive track record with the guy. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I didn't see this coming until 2019. I started to buy in 2019, and then what he did in the major leagues was exactly what he did in AA, and it was, I totally understand why you would be trepidatious about it.
Well, I think you made me that way. That's the problem.
I probably did. My 2017 thing was, but he was a different pitcher then too.
Yeah, no, I mean that's.
And I talked to a really good scouting contact friend of mine that he's like, I knew the changeup was there in 2017, and he's like, I think I put a upside of a 5 on it, and really and truly I couldn't convince myself to go higher on it, and he's like, it's bothered me, and I was kind of the same way at that time. I just could not commit to that because we're so used to seeing the same thing. And, especially in this time right now where, spin rates have, basically taken over evaluation in some respects. This guy is not a dude that lights that up. I mean, his changeup doesn't spin. I mean, that's good for a changeup, but like his fastball is very ordinary. It doesn't really move. His curveball is just kind of a, whatever pitch. I mean, he lives in a place in the strike zone that guys don't tend to get away with, but because of his extension, because of how pinpoint that slot is, he's throwing from way up here.
Right. And you can see that on the cover for sure. The whole, I mean, I get that part of it. And I'm interested certainly to watch. I mean, he's a player I'm interested in watching kind of go through the majors the whole year and kind of watch more closely with all this stuff in mind. Cause it's he's certainly in 2020, blew my expectations far.
I mean, I put a 7 on the changeup, and apparently that's taboo according to some people. But like, it's a 7 changeup for me. I'm sorry. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong on that. But like, it's a phenomenal pitch just because he doesn't throw for strikes often. It doesn't mean it's not. It's not serving its purpose. That's what we need to kind of get out of that evaluation that like, a pitch out of the zone, walking a guy on 6 pitches because you can't tempt him to go out of the strike zone, but then getting a double play on the next play is, still a very successful outcome.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I picked on right away, Chris, is like and it's a great point you made at the beginning, is not all walk rates are created equal with command and control. How much of that walk rate is someone just not giving in, having confidence in his stuff and not giving in, as opposed to somebody who actually can't throw it over the plate. So, 7 changeup. You heard it here. That's interesting. So cool. We did get one last question on Jordan Groshans. So you probably weren't here earlier, but Brent put Groshans as a potential top 5 prospect this time next year. So that probably qualifies him as the truth in all caps. But Brent, anything else you wanted to say there?
I mean, I think given I think of him taking over in 2022 is a little optimistic, and I get bothered by truth in caps there, but I think that's someone. Again, the question was kind of who has the potential to rise into there, not who we think will get there. And I just think Groshans is someone that we need to pay attention to more than what we have.
I mean, we didn't get to see him that much in 2019, as you pointed out and stuff. Like, so like I thought he was a great pick. He was a guy I considered to, if I wasn't so obsessed with Corbin Carroll right now, he was the dude that I, kind of thought about, elevating in that spot, and I'm glad you picked him. But yeah, I don't know about 2022. That seems a little bit too quick.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we got a bunch of comments. Just thanks for hanging in there. Great time tonight, and thank you all. Thanks for hanging with us. This was very, very educational. So, again, if you haven't ordered your MLBA at this point and you're still in the chat, an hour and a half in, you definitely probably already have. But please do so. Go to Baseball HQ and you'll get the electronic version stat. So, Brent, Chris, really appreciate you guys dropping the knowledge and hanging out tonight.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
It was a fun thing.
Just to see more of these guys in person later this year. So,
yes.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your evening.